Hello, linguists. You've tuned in just in time for episode 10B. This is the second in our series of episodes on early modern English. Last time you recall, we talked about the King James version of the Bible. What date? 1611, I know, just popped into your minds. And today we're going to talk about the other most significant text in the early modern English period, responsible along with King James's Bible for beginning the standardization of the English language through their widespread printing and publication. We're also going to have a little bit of fun, I hope. There will be some games included in this assignment, as well as the assignment for upcoming episodes as we approach the last weeks in our story. So today, word games and William Shakespeare. Our first topic today, I've rather Latinately titled Shakespeare's Early Modern English, Omnivorous Lexical Receptivity. And then that sounded a little bit too ornamentally Latinate, and I thought of the very hungry caterpillar. Like the caterpillar cannot get enough leaves to eat, Shakespeare, it seemed, just could not get enough words. And he, in this way, represents English in the early modern period. This is the age of exploration, both in terms of people in ships discovering new lands, new to them, as well as discovery of new texts from the ancient world, discoveries in science, and all of these experiences brought new words into the English language. And Shakespeare, like Chaucer before him, could not get enough of them. And he populated his plays and poems with every new word that was popping up into the English language. And instead of having people ask the question, as I believe I've been asked within even the last week, is that a real word? They simply heard a new word, Shakespeare did, and like a botanist seeing a new flower, cherished it up, savored it, enjoyed it, and made it a part of his science of language. So some examples of Shakespeare's omnivorous lexical receptivity. Some amazing facts. Shakespeare, according to the OED, is listed as the first recorded instance. Remember the quotation, looking for the earliest quote for the sense of a word. He's listed as the earliest quote for 1,600 words in the OED. Some computer searches we're doing now are lowering that number. We found some earlier instances of a few of them, but by and large, imagine this. Just set yourself this task. All right, you're a poet and a playwright. You're the house poet and an actor, part owner for a busy company in Europe and London, and set yourself the goal of writing 30 or so plays, which will never be off the stage for 400 years, going on half of a millennium. Create 1,200 characters in 30 or so plays that will not be off the stage for half a millennium. And just to make things harder, just to tie one hand behind your back, do so while using words 10% of which have never been written down before. Just go ahead and try. I'll wait. Seriously, 1 in 10 words Shakespeare used had never been written down before. Well, where'd they come from? Well, some, I'm certain he just pulled in off the street. It was the newest slang, the newest vernacular. He actually gives us we think of Shakespeare as all high and mighty and high culture, highbrow, Ivy League and stuff. He didn't go to college, but we have to go to college to understand him. He's the first recorded instance of the word to puke. So puke is a Shakespearean term. Other words he simply made up, as in to fishify, with obvious meaning, to transform into a fish. If anyone has an occasion to use that word, please let me know, but Shakespeare had one. Shakespeare even had characters, he loved to do this, he loved language humor. He even had characters misuse words, often to show that they were pretending to a level of education or intelligence higher than they were really master or mistress of. One of those is Constable Dogberry from Much Ado About Nothing. And Constable Dogberry will say things like, "We have comprehended 2 auspicious persons." This is a policeman. He meant to say we have apprehended two suspicious persons. And I guess the point I'm making is just that the OED revered Shakespeare so much, leaned so heavily to the linguistic side for its evidence, that even when Shakespeare has characters misuse a term, like knowingly get it wrong, that wrong definition of the word is in the OED. And it's cited as a malapropism. That is actually eponymous. There's a character from a Sheridan play called Miss Malaprop, and her thing is she misuses words. Well, Shakespeare loved to have people misuse words, and the OED loved him so much that even those intentionally wrong meanings show up in the OED as well. Some nouns. You can pause the slide and read. The ones in green are simply ones that I found interesting. These are nouns that, according to the OED, Shakespeare was the first person to write down. Alligator. Assassination. Fascinating history to assassination. If you don't know what its connection is to marijuana, look it up. Bandit. He would often put words together. We had bed. We had room. We didn't have a bedroom before Shakespeare. Courtship. To dawn. I'm sorry. To dawn existed, but dawn the noun didn't exist. Luggage. Things you lug around. Eyeball. We all have eyeballs because of Shakespeare. Even zany. Some new verbs. To bet. To blanket, as in the snow blanketed the prairie. To drug. To elbow someone. He loved to verb nouns and to noun verbs because when there just aren't rules, when there, at this point there were no spelling books and no grammar books, except for there were a few, but they were very minimal, and they were only designed to teach non-native speakers the rudiments of English. So they were like Berlitz travel guides for here's some English for you if you don't know the language. They were not the definitive arbiters of this is what is a word or what is the correct meaning. So if there are no rules, you just kind of express yourself. You can verb a noun or noun a verb. To misquote, to pander, to puke. To reword something, even to torture. New adjective, blood-stained. Again, a combination. Deafening, epileptic. Fashionable, inaudible. Something is lackluster. If it's lacking in luster, that's one word, thanks to the bard. Premeditated, soft-hearted. Unreal. Oh, that's fascinating. And worthless. Well, I found that the very best way to demonstrate Shakespeare's, what did I say, omnivorous lexical receptivity, or his voracity for words, like the hungry caterpillar, is to look at his insults. And what Cyrano de Bergerac is to love language, you know that story, Shakespeare's to insults. You can feel the copiousness of the New English language, modern English. By copiousness, I mean the vast resources of English. We've got the Germanic stock from Old English, the French stock from the Norman conquest. You've got Greek and Latin pouring in continuously. This is the age of empire and exploration, with all of the horrors those have inflicted on indigenous peoples throughout the world. The British Empire will eventually spread to cover a quarter of the globe. That's a lot of new encounters with new languages, new animals, new customs. Those words like raccoon and wigwam come into our language from all over the world. And so even more than Chaucer, who could pull from different dialects of Middle English and Old English, Shakespeare can pull from a language which has one of the largest word hoards, that is, total lexicons, of any in the world. I think there are more English words compared to Russian words by about a factor of 3 or 4. The same thing is true of Italian. There's simply more English words. And Shakespeare is like a kid reveling in a sandbox full of more sand than the other kids have sand in their sandbox. And the best way to see that, I think, is to look at his insults. So first some of my favorites, and then we'll play a little game. You are not worth another word, else I'd call you knave. I do desire we may be better strangers. That one stands up today. Use that. More of your conversation would infect my brain. There's more faith in thee than in a stewed prune. Here's a little tidbit for you. Brothels, houses of ill repute, prostitute houses, just like bars today have sort of peanuts on the bar for kind of bar snacks, the sort of standard snack at a brothel was a stewed prune. And I'll just let you make of that what you will. I haven't figured it out, and I'm not sure I want to. I scorn you, scurvy companion. Away, you moldy rogue, away! You blocks, you stones, you worse than senseless things. Or simply, out, dunghill. Thou horse on Z, where Z is Z, thou unnecessary letter. I like the word humor. You are a tedious fool. There, tedious means boring. And how about this? Some report a sea maid spawned him, some that he was begot by two stockfishes. But it is certain that when he makes water, that is, when he pees, his urine is congealed ice. Ouch. Vile worm, thou wast o'erlooked even in thy birth. No one noticed you even when you were being born. Nice. Thou art a Castilian king urinal. Can't explain that one, but it's colorful. Thou lump of foul deformity. You peasant swain, you whoreson malt-hort drudge. Thou sodden-witted lord. Sodden is like soggy. Thou hast no more brain than I have in my elbows. Go hang yourself, you naughty mocking uncle. Well, we're going a little Monty Python here, aren't we? And then there are these long strings where Shakespeare has these insult wars, famously between Falstaff and Hal in Henry IV, Part 1, a play I always start my Shakespeare class with. Some of you out there are graduates of my Shakespeare class, veterans. Love that play. They will just fire away insults at each other. I happen to grab this one from King Lear. Oswald is a sort of fancy fellow from the court. Kent, playing a character named Caius or Keys, is a plain-spoken sort of rough-neck defender of the king. So Oswald runs in. Oh, I am scarce in breath, my lord. Kent, no marvel you have so bestirred your valor. You cowardly rascal, nature disclaims thee. Nature disowns you, says, I didn't make this guy. A tailor made thee. That's funny. And Lord Cornwall says, oh, thou art a strange fellow. A tailor make a man. He doesn't get the joke that the clothing makes the man, and so whoever made your outfit created you. Kent, I, a tailor, sir, a stonecutter or a painter could not have made him so poorly, though they had been but 2 hours in the trade, if they'd only been experienced for 2 hours. Cornwall, well, speak yet. How grew your quarrel? Oswald, this ancient ruffian, sir, whose life I have spared, out of suit of his grey beard. I've spared him because he's, got a grey beard and he's older. And Kent comes smack dab at him. Thou whoreson Zed, thou unnecessary letter. My lord, addressing Cornwall, if you'll give me leave, I will tread this unbolted villain into mortar and daub the wall of my jakes with him. Spare my grey beard, you wagtail. He's just offered the Lord Cornwall to stamp Oswald into what we would call caulk, and to caulk the tiles of his toilet and his bathroom with him. Nice. Cornwall, peace, sirrah, you beastly knave, know you no reverence? Do you not know how to be polite? Kent answers, yes, sir, but anger hath a privilege. And I think Shakespeare believed that. Anger hath a privilege. At least it seems true when you pull out, as I'll ask you to do now, your Shakespeare insult kit. You'll find it attached to this assignment. It is a sheet with 3 columns. I did not make it up, but someone has assembled this from all the words that Shakespeare uses in insults in all of his plays. And you simply play by grabbing one word from each column. You can use alliteration to string together some fun pairs, or some thematic unity, or just grab 3 and see what they sound like. And you might want to start now, you spongy, ill-breeding footlickers. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that impolite? I just really meant to call you droning, flap-mouthed hedge pigs. You don't even need to know what these words mean to have fun with them, do you? So, actual assignment. Turn to the person next to you now or later and hurl your best Shakespearean insult at them. Make sure you know the person. You don't want to get arrested or, maced or something, but just go up to someone you know and launch one at them. There'll be a homework assignment about that as well, and a longer assignment coming up for this unit project for Modern English. I'll ask you to write a whole dialogue based in Shakespearean insults. Speaking of which, would you like an example? I thought you might. Several years ago, I taught the son of a colleague in this class. My colleague is Eric Elder. He's just retired from Northwestern a year or two ago from teaching economics, business. His son David was an English major. David is now an English professor at Morningside College in Sioux City. And back when he was a teeny little English major and was taking hell back before it was online, I think I just wrote stuff on chalkboards in those days. This was a while ago. He decided to make up this dialogue, which I will share with you in its entirety because I star in it. I've never felt so important. The Shakespeare Insult Comedy Hour. There's David down there. Hello, and welcome to the Shakespeare Insult Comic Hour. I'm your host, Yeasty Loggerhead. Today's contestants will be attempting to make each other cry. In the blue corner, we have Dr. Michael Kinsack, weighing in at 1 PhD, 1 MA, and 1 BA. And in the second corner, we have in the red corner Puck, weighing in at being a Shakespeare character. Except tonight he's a little drunk. Dr. Kinsack, you start. Round 1. You have a pig nut faced, and your mom was a yeasty old codpiece. Oh, very good, Dr. Kinsack. Now to you, Puck. First off, don't be making fun of my mama. Second of all, at least I got a mom. You were spawned from the mold-warped dishes of an unkempt, pox-marked boar pig. Oh, smashing. Rebuttal. Well, that boar pig was actually your dad, you naughty-pated, hell-hated rogue. Your family was one of my vassals, you villainous weedy milk liver. Oh, yeah, Puck, at least I don't go around common, kissing, elf-skinned wenches. Shut it, Kinsack, or I'll kick your ding. Okay, end of round 1. Round 2 will consist of 5-word insults. Puck, you start. You're a wayward, way-faced measle. You suck sheep-biting strumpets. Lick my spongy goat legs, Kinsack. That, by the way, might be my favorite moment in the history of this course. Lick my spongy goat legs, Kinsack. Eat your dead grandma's fly-bitten butt, Puck. Oh, Dr. Kinsack, I'm sorry, but that was too long of an insult. You lose by default. Thank you, David, for that. Let me tell you a brief story before we get on further. You get the sense of Shakespeare's omnivorous lexical receptivity. He's just omnivorous. He just can't get enough words. He hurls them in insults for fun. You get the sense that his characters could go on and on without ever stopping insulting each other. That's why Shakespeare was able to express so much. He just relished words uncritically. A brief story. We have a, I don't know if we'd still do it, we have a senior chapel moment at the end of the year where seniors, we used to have a representative group of maybe 20 seniors go up on the stage and have a kind of common prayer, corporate prayer to God, just being thankful for the gift of our education, for the time we've spent in this place with each other, for the many gifts and mercies we've been blessed to receive. And so, bunch of years ago, one of my early years at Northwestern, I was a young professor. I had brought this same Shakespeare insult kid into Shakespeare class, and I noticed about 4 of my English majors are up there on stage, and I'm in the audience in the congregation. I'm praying, I'm thanking God for all the good things that I've gotten to experience with this fine young group of people. And they're thanking the Lord for softball tournaments they've won. They're thanking God for their internships in something. And one of them says, and I just thank you, Lord, for that beslubbering, bat-fouling barnacle of a Professor Kinsack. And I'm like, yikes. Nice, but kind of inappropriate. And then I see my other students. And they, in the middle of corporate prayer to the Lord, in chapel, in front of everyone, start calling each other droning, dog-hearted death tokens and goatish, fool-born giglets. And they just, I think they did what Shakespeare did. They just kind of revel and relish all of the fun, unexpected things they'd learned. And I was thinking in my heart, stop, stop, not appropriate. I don't have tenure yet. But on they went, and it was a bit of a fun time. So Shakespeare insults. Now to something maybe a little bit less fun, but still hopefully very engaging. We talked last time while in the KJV about comparatives and superlatives: good, better, best, long, longer, longest, interesting, more interesting, most interesting. Let's look at those forms in Shakespeare. And again, the theme is modern English is the period of standardization. Early modern English, which Shakespeare is still in, we are only beginning the project of standardizing English. So really what we're looking at is variation of the breaking of what we would think today of as rules, hard and fast rules, the way things are, the real, true form of the language, just getting broken right and left because, of course, standardization is only beginning and there are no rules yet to the game. So Shakespeare's comparatives and superlatives. He used three forms that we find unacceptable today. They're either in your grammar book or they're not in your grammar book because they're just unspoken rules. We don't like double comparatives or double superlatives. Better or bestest. But Shakespeare had no problem saying this is the most unkindest cut of all, where most and est make it a double superlative. We have a rule that a polysyllable, like interesting, doesn't take er or est. We don't say interesting-er. We say more interesting. But he was able to say violentest contrariety rather than most violent. And we do use more or most with monosyllables, like long, longer, green, greener. But he could say more strong rather than stronger. He could also say stronger if it fit him, because that word shows up as well. He simply, like Chaucer spelling sweet, sota and suete, had variety and options. He also had options in past tense forms. Last time, three times today I holpe him to his horse, and the first was that I helped thee to the crown. So what's the past tense of help? Is it weak, which would be helped? Yes, there's an apostrophe there, that's the E, helped. Or is it sing, sang, sung, help, holp, and with the past participle, holpen. So the top one's strong, the bottom one's weak. Which one? The bottom, helped. This is, Glendower, talking about the heavens declaring him special when he was born. He says, the frame and huge foundation of the earth shaked like a coward when I was born. Oh, and that's Hotspur replying. See, Hotspur's a naturalist. He doesn't believe in this metaphysical stuff. And he says, oh, well then the earth shook to see the heavens on fire. So within, you can do the math, 10 lines, 8 lines. Shakespeare's use shake, shaked, and shake, shook, simply because they fit his sound and meter needs. This one's one we haven't quite figured out yet today. When the sun shined on the windows, this is actually, we've got to go to Thomas Kyd for this, but it's the same time period. When the sun shined on the windows, or that ere the sun shone bright on. What's the past tense of to shine? Shine on. More. Beheld them, I'm just grabbing bits, you don't need to understand them, just notice the verb forms. Beheld them when they lighted, that is, got down off their horse, how they clung in their embracement. What's the past tense of to cling? He on the sudden clinged her so about. Went to Marlowe for that one. To John Donne, it came and swole our sails, that is, the wind. What's the past tense of to swell? Is it what Shakespeare uses in Cymbeline? And Sidney swelled above the banks. How about to stick? This is, I have to go to Gage for this one. Many devout persons came and sticked in the dewy image precious stones. Talking about a martyr's altar. Or Merchant of Venice. He stuck them up before the fulsome ewes. That's Shylock talking about Jacob earning the ewes from Laban, I believe. What's the past tense of to stick? Reflect for a bit. I gave you one direction to think of. Are there any words where even today we have not decided on what the correct standard past tense form is? Whether it's strong or weak. One of them is, I have this argument going with my wife. What's the past tense of sneak? I'll ask you. And there's another one I've been hearing on the news all the time. Oh, it's not coming to me. Give me a second to think. No, I paused the recording for a few seconds, but I could not come up with it. It's a politics word or a legal word, something like vote or indict or something like that. And it's much in the news today, and every second person I hear uses a different past tense of it. Maybe one of you will come up with that. I can't think of it, but there are still words where we have not yet decided whether the past tense is strong or weak. Now, on to preposition madness. New flavor of Ben & Jerry's ice cream? I'd buy it. Sounds tasty. Last time we talked also about how prepositions are the kind of vowels of grammatical parts of speech. Like vowels, they're unstable. Their meaning changes. Prepositions have concrete meanings, like to set something in a cave or to sit on a rock. You can picture that very physically. You can mime that with your hands. But then they get these extended figurative meanings, like to give in to temptation. What's the in there? Actually, that there is no in temptation, but the linguist Steven Pinker, in the book The Stuff of Thought, can't recommend that highly enough, would say that our brains are conceiving of temptation as a cave, or at least something that one can go into. That in preposition used abstractly tells us something about how our brains conceive abstract things. Fascinating issue by itself. Pinker in the book The Stuff of Thought uses another example like, okay, think about being underwater. If you're underwater, you're not really underwater, you're in the water, because underwater would be like the silt and the ground underneath the lake or the ocean, right? Well, why do we say underwater? Well, Pinker says that preposition shows us the way we've abstracted it, that we imagine in our brains, we represent water as a two-dimensional surface with no thickness. So that when we're underwater, we're under the surface of the water. So in our brain has to make a model of reality. We model water as like a piece of paper, geometrically. The same thing applies to ground. You bury someone underground. What's under the ground? I think under the ground is the space above China, right? Under the ground? Because we also conceive of the ground as a two-dimensional surface, not a three-dimensional thickness. That's a fun tangent. But right now we're just talking about prepositions which have concrete meanings and extended figurative meanings. And those figurative meanings may tell us something about how our brains conceive the world, but also those meanings change. And the words which are used, say, with a given verb, like give in to temptation, those change very quickly. Since standardization is beginning, you'll hear Shakespeare using prepositions in ways where we would use a different one. And again, I'll ask you what we would use today. For instance, he came of an errand to me. We would say on an errand to me. Therefore, prepare yourself to death. We'd use a different preposition. And be not, I is a J, jealous on me, gentle Brutus. How, the Duke of Council in this time of the night? And I have no power upon you. Hers you are. In each case, we'd use a different preposition. Ours are not correct. His are not incorrect. It's just a lava lamp. The prepositions, they are a-changin'. A few more. We'll deliver you of your great danger. What do you think on it? Oh, I used do. Do hadn't really emerged yet. What think you on it? The do form for questions hadn't really emerged. Like it to a ship that having escaped a tempest is straightway calm and boarded with a pirate. That's an instrumental preposition. We have a different one today. That he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. And finally, meet me in the palace wood a mile without the town. So don't bring the town with you. Yeah, we'd say something different there. And some more. May you both be suddenly surprised by bloody hands in sleeping on your bed. And Romeo, we came down a foul hill, my master riding behind me, my mistress. Curtis asks, both of one horse? You know what he means. What would we say? Well, finally today, and this is one of my favorite things to share, Shakespeare's early modern you. Visual pun. Let's do a little bit of grammar. Pronouns, early modern pronouns. Today, we only have, and I want you to picture your pronouns like that. If you've taken German with me, you know to do your six-fold chart, 2 columns of 3. Single, left, plural, right, first, second, third person going down. I, we, thou, you, he, she, it, they. Today we only have you because thou went away. And when we lost thou, we lost some really important abilities in the English language. If you have German, you singular is du, and you plural is ihr. And there's also a formal version of you, which is sie. In French, you have tu and vous, not to mention how they use on, but you have a singular and a plural. In Spanish, tú and usted, ustedes. Since English lost thou and you sort of took over the whole second row there, we've lost a secondary ability that we often attach to singular versus plural. See, singular can also be informal and plural can be formal. So that distinction is not just in number, it gives us the ability to show respect, or to withhold respect, to show contempt. It's just lacking in English. But Shakespeare had it. It's funny, isn't it, that thou was originally singular and you was originally plural, so you was originally formal. And it's funny, isn't it, that when we think of thou today, it sounds more formal to us. Why is that? Because it sounds old-fashioned, and things old-fashioned sound antique and reverend and ancient. So if we prayed, thou art, O Lord, thou art, I mean, that sounds formal to us. But originally, that was informal. By the way, when you hear thou today used among, say, the Amish, calling each other thou, it's not some kind of heightened formality. These are the brethren and the sustren calling each other by their informal names. Informally, using thou. So going back to a time when thou could be familiar, which is the positive spin, or contemptuous, which is the negative, and you could be respectful, which is the positive, or kind of distancing, putting someone at an arm's length. That's the rather more negative one. Let's read Romeo and Juliet. I normally don't teach this play. In fact, I call this the play which shall not be named. So some people know that I refer to it as the Voldemort play. I just don't like it. It's too overdone. And I don't think it's Shakespeare's best work. And I think it's a comedy, by the way. Talk to me after class if you're interested in that. In any case, let's retell the story of Romeo and Juliet as a tale of the love affair between two pronouns. Follow me. So, the two first meet at the ball, the 13-year-olds do. And Juliet is going to make a pilgrimage kind of pun, extended play, on the guy who's come up to her at a masked ball. Oh, who's made a pilgrimage to her. Oh, good pilgrim. He's just kissed her hand, and he says, you do wrong your hand too much, which is showing mannerly devotion in this, to the kissing of hands. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch. When a pilgrim goes to a pilgrimage shrine, like Thomas a Becket, you touch a saint's, the leftover hand. And palm to palm is holy Palmer's kiss. Palmer. Hey, that is the word from the first sentence of the Canterbury Tales. And Palmer is for to saken straungus strondus. People have been all the way to Jerusalem for the palm branch. So how's she addressing him? As you. Why? They're strangers. She doesn't know him. They're not familiar. It's respectful. It's also distancing. It's appropriate, right? Romeo, though, gets flirty. And Juliet just said, well, this hand kissing, that's a little forward of you as a pilgrim to my pilgrimage site. Palm to palm, we should have shook hands. That's how holy Palmer's kiss. It's a pun, right, on palm? But Romeo takes her up on the metaphor of pilgrimage and says, but have not saints lips? And holy Palmers also have lips. And yes, hooray for the age before the advent of the apostrophe, because that's a possessive noun. No, that one's not. Palmer's below it is. That's in the wrong place. It's S apostrophe. So Romeo says, but if we're saints, then saints have lips, right? And Palmers have lips too. And Juliet comes right back and says, yes, pilgrim, lips that they must use, with a V, in prayer. Then Romeo says, and he's going to turn that around on her in two ways, one content-wise, one grammatical, says, then dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray, grant thou, that least is lest faith turn to despair. In other words, if we're saints, and I'm devoted to you, let's use our lips. Not in prayer, but he's thinking about using lips in something else. But the significant thing is, he called her thou. He thou'd her. There's a word for that in German. It's called dutzen, to say, call me du. So why is he saying thou? If she's being formal and respectful and distancing to the new boy hitting on her, what's he doing? That thou is the pronoun version of slipping his arm around her shoulders at the movie theater. See? Let's see how things progress. Juliet responds, saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake. Saints don't, get around and kiss each other, but they will grant if they're prayed to properly. And then Romeo, well, then don't move. While my prayers affect, that's possessive too, while the effect, the granting of my prayer, I take. Thus from thy lips, and then you receive forgiveness of sins from a pilgrimage site, remember? That him hath holpen one that there were sake, the holy blissful martyr. By thine my sin is purged, and he kisses her. And notice that he thines her again, wining and dining and thining. And then Juliet, feeling she's transgressed a boundary, says, then have my lips the sin that they've took. There's another interesting past tense, right? My lips then just took sin from your lips rather than giving you forgiveness of sins. And Romeo, we can't have that then, Juliet. Sin from my lips, trespass sweetly urged. Give me my sin again, then give it back to me with a kiss. And she responds, you kiss by the book. By the book is Christians are people of the book. By the book is always also like, just textbook, pretty standard kissing there, boy. Nothing interesting in your kissing, but also a reference to the biblical kind of pilgrimage religious narrative that's going on underneath all of this. But was she pulled in by the thou? That you is her version of slipping out from underneath his arm at the movie theater and pulling her sweater about her and pushing him a little bit to the side. You see, it's a battle of pronouns. I know, how cool is that? The most romantic scene in all of literature, and its true coolness is that the pronouns are battling. On we go. Their second meeting. Remember, Juliet is on her balcony scene, maybe the second most famous scene in all of literature. And she's saying, and you have to scan the line right, it's not Romeo, Romeo. This is not E.E. Cumming. She says, "O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" And you know what she's saying? She's figured out who the masked man was who kissed her. Sorry, the masked prepubescent. With less nourishment available, puberty would have come at maybe 16 back then. I'm convinced these are 13-year-olds fascinated by each other. So she's saying, I figured out who you are. Why do you have to belong to the other family, the Capulets and the Montagues? Why do you have to be, that wherefore is why. Why do you have to be Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. If you swear your love to me, I'll no longer be a Capulet. I'll be a Montague like you. And Romeo, down below, says, shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this? And I would suggest to you that he's not simply saying, oh, cool, I just overheard her saying she loves me, like I just read her Facebook page or something that I've hacked into. How did he know that she loves him? I'll leave you to answer that for the homework question. She goes on, "'Tis but thy name." Notice how many thys there are now in her speech. "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, not a Montague. Romeo, doff thy name, take off thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself." And up he climbs and says, "I take thee at thy word." And that word is thy, or thou, or thee. "Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized," continuing that like love as religious experience thing going on. "Henceforth I never will be Romeo." Juliet, then to his face, "What man art thou, that thus be screened in night? So stumblest on my counsel? Who are you overhearing me?" Does she really know it's not him? Because look what pronoun she used. Romeo, "By a name, I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself, because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word." Shakespeare loves to think of words in their written forms. At one point he has Hamlet crouching between the K, between the N and the D of the word kind. And Juliet, "My ears have not yet drunk 100 words of thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague?" And then the battle of the pronouns has ended, and thou hast won.